Yesterday, I uploaded a video lesson from class, but today I'll be doing the second half of our lesson, which is on fraction and decimal patterns. Before we can begin our first question, we need to go over the definition of a unit fraction. So a unit fraction is a fraction with a numerator of 1, which means the top number is 1. This could be 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3, 1 out of 7, or 1 out of any number. The first question asks you to write the fraction as a sum of unit fractions and as a product of a fraction. So the word fraction starting to feel repetitive. The first step when they give us our fraction is to write it as a sum of unit fractions. So if we have 3/8, that's the same as 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8. So however many, what our numbers in the numerator is how many unit fractions we will need. Then they ask us to write this as a product. So product is the answer to a multiplication question. So we would need to go 3 times 1/8. So basically our numerator times the unit fraction. The next question also has two parts. So write the fraction as a sum of unit fractions. So this is the same step we started with last time. But then it says to write the unit fractions as decimals and add. So this is kind of our steps 2 and 3. If they give you the number 3/5, our first step is to write it as a sum of unit fractions. So it's 1 out of 5, and we need to do this 3 times. So that would be 2/5 and 3/5. Then our second step, we turn them into decimals. So 1 out of 5 is the same thing as, if we multiply it by 2, 2 out of 10. This gives us a decimal of 0.2. So we're going to exchange all of our unit fractions for 0.2. So 0.2 plus 0.2 plus 0.2. Then we add them all together. So 0.2 plus 0.2 plus 0.2 is 0.6. Question number 3 asks you to write the fraction as the product, so think multiplication, of a unit fraction, so 1 out of something, and a whole number. Then write the unit fraction as a decimal and multiply. If they've given us 4/5, our first step is to write it as a product. So we're multiplying a whole number and a unit fraction. So our unit fraction would be 1/5. The whole number we multiply it by would be 4. 4 times 1/5 is the same as 4/5. So it's basically our numerator times our unit fraction. Then we look at multiplying a decimal. We're going to keep our whole number as 4 and change 1/5 into a decimal, which we learned in the last question is 0.2. Our final step is to find the answer. So 4 times 0.2 is 0.8. 4 has several parts, and we're going to start by looking at part A. So it says, what is the rule for the pattern 0.05 plus 0.10, or 0.10, 0.15, 0.20? So the format for a rule is start at something, and then are we adding or subtracting? And in this one, we're adding something each time. So if we look at this, we start at 0.05, and then we increase or we add 0.5 each time. That's what it's going up by. Part B is getting you to look at how the fraction can relate to the pattern. So they've told us that 1 out of 20 is 0.05, 2 out of 20 is 0.10, 3 out of 20 is 0.15, and they're going to ask us to keep going until we get to 11. So 4 out of 20, 5 out of 20, 6 out of 20, 7 out of 20, 8 out of 20, 9 out of 20, 10 out of 20, and 11 out of 20. I'm just going to change colors so you don't lose track with me, and we're going to go through. We're going to keep going up by 5 hundredths. So this would be 0.25, 0.30, 0.35, 0.40, 0.45, 0.50, and 0.55. So this would be our decimal equivalent to 11/20. Our final question asks, if you know that 1/20 is 0.05, how can you multiply to find 11/20 as a decimal? So if we think of 1/20 times what whole number? Times 11 would give us 11/20. We should be able to multiply the decimal by that. So 0.05 times 11 equals 0.55. And that gives us the same answer that we had in our earlier question. We're going to use this concept to help ourselves with question number 5. So 1/4 is the same thing as what as a decimal? Well, if you think of money, a quarter of a dollar is 0.25. So 7 quarters is going to be, and we're going to break this down to our numerator times our decimal. So our unit fraction, it's 7 times a quarter. And so a quarter is 0.25. So we're looking at 7 times 0.25, and then we're going to multiply that. So 7 times 0.25 is 1.75. So this is the structure. Our final question has many, many parts. So the first thing it asks you to do is write the fraction as a decimal. So the first example we'll give is 1/4 plus 2/5. So our first step is to write the fraction as a decimal. So I'm going to do this in blue. 1/4 as a decimal is 0.25, and 2/5 as a decimal is the same as 4/10, so that is 0.4. Then I need to add the decimals. This is my second step. So I need to add my tenths together. So this is 0.65, and then the hundredths go on the end. My third step is to write the sum as a fraction in lowest terms. So I'm going to start with this just as a decimal fraction. So I have 2 places it goes to the hundredth, so my numerator needs 2 zeros to be 100, and then I need to divide. Well, I could divide both of these by 5, and 65 divided by 5 is 13, and 100 divided by 5 is 20. I can't bring this any lower because 13 is a prime number. Now their final step is to check your answer by adding the fractions. Now this is where we're going to get a little bit tricky. So we have 1/4 plus 2/5. We need to turn these into fractions that have the same denominator. So 4 and 5 can both become 20. So to get from 1/4 to something out of 20, I need to multiply by 5. So 1 times 5 is 5. To get from 2/5 To get from 5 to 20, I need to multiply by 4. So 2 times 4 is 8. So it would be 5/20 and 8/20. And when we add that together, our numerators, 5 and 8, add up to give us 13 out of 20. Our denominator doesn't change. And this gives us the same answer. So we know, yes, this is correct.